Hello and welcome to our BCCC webinar, Greening Fuels for a Sustainable Future, organized by the Brazil-Canada Chamber of Commerce, the BCCC, in partnership with the Consulate General of Brazil in Montreal and the Câmara de Comércio Brazil-Canada, CCBC. I'm Andrea Gardella, Chair of the BCCC Ottawa Chapter and Director of Alcance Solutions. I want to thank our annual sponsors, Vale, Rio Tinto, Mellahawk Logistics, Brookfield, BMA Law, Proactiva Results, and all our members and partners for their continued support. We are an independent nonprofit organization that has promoted business relations between Brazil and Canada for over 50 years. At the BCCC, we connect. And before we start, the BCCC Ottawa chapter acknowledges that the City of Ottawa stands on the unceded and unsurrendered territory of the Algonquin Anishinaabe Nation. The Algonquin Anishinaabe peoples have lived on and cared for this territory for millennia, and their culture and presence continues to sustain this land today. We honor the peoples and the land of the Algonquin Anishinaabe Nation, as well as all First Nations, Inuit, Métis, and all Indigenous peoples, recognizing their invaluable past and present contributions to this land, known as Turtle Island. Also, together we stand as leaders, embracing diversity, equity, and inclusion. We recognize that DEI is not just the right thing to do, but essential for our organization's success. We lead the change, understanding that diversity and inclusion practices must permeate all aspects of our business. By weaving DEI into the fabric of our organization, we cultivate an environment where every individual thrives and feels a sense of belonging, innovation flourishes, and collective potential is realized. Let us forge ahead, united in our mission to create a diverse and inclusive future that transcends boundaries and elevates us all. Now, we are honored to invite the Consul General of Brazil to Montreal, Ambassador Fernando Coimbra, and the Directeur du Bureau du Québec à São Paulo, Jason No, for the opening remarks. Ambassador Coimbra and Jason, welcome.
Bonjour, hi. It is a great pleasure to open this webinar, another important event resulting from the fruitful partnership between the Consulate General of Brazil in Montreal and the Brazil-Canada Chamber of Commerce, which is also supported by the Câmara de Comércio Brazil-Canada, CCBC. Warm greetings to Andrea Gardella and Jason Naoud, and to our panelists, Tamar Reutman and Devin O'Grady. Mes salutations aussi à tous les membres du BCCC qui nous rejoignent aujourd'hui. Merci pour votre intérêt de discuter et de partager votre expérience avec nous dans un domaine si important pour le futur de notre planète. Une des plus nobles missions d'un diplomate et une des plus grandes sources de satisfaction personnelle est celle de construire des ponts, rapprocher les cultures, les pays, les entreprises, mettre en contact les personnes, aider à tracer les chemins d'entente qui puissent contribuer à la prospérité de nos sociétés. That is what today is all about. Sharing reflections, figuring out ways to better connect, identifying opportunities for cooperation and business in the field of sustainable fuels, benefiting from two ambitious initiatives, which, although conceived in different contexts, point to the same goal: accelerating the energy transition and building a cleaner and more resilient economy. On the one hand, Brazil recently approved the Fuel of the Future Act, signed into law on October the 8th, 2024 by President Lula. This piece of legislation contributes to consolidating Brazil's position as a leader in the global energy transition and to decarbonizing its transport matrix, avoiding the emission of 705 million tons of CO2 equivalent by 2037. The act is linked to other government programs, such as the MOVER program, that promote innovation, decarbonization of the land fleet, and market expansion. It also integrates Brazilian agriculture with biofuels, with an emphasis on the use of renewable raw materials and national technologies for land, air, and sea transport. We now have a national framework for decarbonizing the transportation sector, integrating advanced biofuels, new carbon capture technologies, and sustainability certifications. This law further reinforces programs that are already recognized worldwide, such as RenovaBio, which implements our national biofuels policy and sets clear goals, such as increasing the mandatory biodiesel blend to 20% by 2030, allowing up to 35% ethanol in gasoline, and introducing mandatory percentages of sustainable aviation fuels, which should reach 10% by 2037. This law also creates a regulatory framework for CO2 capture and geological storage, as I mentioned, in addition to establishing rules for biomethane certification. Brazil is thus transforming its agricultural and technological base, one of the most dynamic sectors of our economy, into an engine of green competitiveness. Le Québec, de sa part, implémente le plan pour une économie verte 2030, qui oriente les actions du gouvernement de la province pour réduire ses émissions à effet de serre et pour s'adapter au changement climatique pendant cette décennie. I am sure that our friend Jason Naoud, head of the Quebec office in São Paulo, will make much more qualified comments on the Quebec plan than this, my introduction. But I cannot fail to highlight that Quebec has, in this manner, proven to be a remarkable example of integration between public policy, science, and industry. The province is accelerating the electrification of transportation, one of the main sources of emissions. It encourages innovation and renewable energies, with an emphasis on hydroelectricity, green hydrogen, and biofuels, and is investing heavily in sustainable mobility, electric buses, clean public transportation, regional trains, and in creating a complete value chain around batteries and critical minerals. I trust, therefore, that this seminar will be useful in helping us build bridges between Brazil and Quebec, two leaders in clean energy with complementary strengths. Brazil dominates large-scale production of advanced biofuels with decades of experience in ethanol and biodiesel, and now also in sustainable aviation fuel. Quebec, in turn, is a world leader in electrification, innovation, and environmental governance. These complementarities provide fertile ground for technological, scientific, and industrial cooperation, for joint sustainable mobility projects, combining electrification and biofuels, and for partnerships to develop and create common standards for traceability and carbon neutrality. The strength of the aviation industry in both markets adds concrete opportunities for the production and use of sustainably sourced SAF. The Fuel of the Future Act and the 2030 Green Economy Plan are not just effective public policies. They are converging visions of the future, a future in which energy innovation and sustainability go hand in hand. I would also like to highlight the importance of the commitments to substantially reduce greenhouse gas emissions and to a just energy transition that both sides have renewed at COP30 in Belém do Pará. I particularly celebrate the decision to quadruple the use of sustainable fuels over the next decade. En se donnant la main, le Brésil et le Québec peuvent rendre la transition énergétique en une opportunité de coopération, de développement et de prospérité partagée. This is our commitment. Merci beaucoup. Thank you very much. E muito obrigado.
Bonjour, hi everyone, boa tarde. Premièrement, j'aimerais saluer et remercier l'ambassadeur Coimbra. Sempre um prazer colaborar com o embaixador. Je tiens à remercier Andrea et Khalil remercier la BCCC, remercier la CCBC également pour l'organisation de ce webinaire. Donc, je pense que c'est une grande opportunité, une belle opportunité pour partager des idées et pour renforcer la collaboration. So my name is Jason No. I'm the director of the Quebec office here in São Paulo, Brazil. I'm with my colleague Frederico Chagas, who is in charge of supporting Quebec's companies to do business in Brazil in the energy sector. At an institutional and economic level, our role as a Quebec office is to support Quebec's development and to promote its interests globally. In the context of the energy transition, we work closely with businesses, researchers, and partners to accelerate innovation and investment. We also collaborate in complementarity with the CCBC, with the BCCC teams, and with the General Consulate of Canada in São Paulo to ensure alignment and impact. Just a few days ago, the government of Quebec launched its new economic vision. At the heart of this vision are renewable energies. Why? Because the energy transition, it's an exceptional driver of growth. Quebec is making clean energy an economic engine, creating quality jobs and fostering regional and industrial development. This commitment is backed by strong legislation. The Act, ensuring the responsible governance of energy resources, adopted in June 2025, gives us the tools to achieve our goals. To accelerate energy projects and to introduce an integrated resource management plan to define the optimal mix of energy sources. This plan will guarantee Quebec's energy security, respect affordability, and align availability with our national objectives. We have also launched the Quebec Strategy on Green Hydrogen and Bioenergy. Its purpose is clear: create the right conditions to speed up production, distribution, and use of these renewable energies. The goal is to replace fossil fuels, cut gas emissions, and decarbonize sectors that are hard to electrify, all while strengthening our economy. Quebec has expertise in hydrogen R&D. Advances in electrolyzer technology and the low cost of renewable electricity make a competitive green hydrogen sector possible. As for bioenergy, it represented 8% of Quebec's energy consumption in 2019, and we plan to increase production by 50% by 2030. Studies show that our residual biomass resources, forestry, agriculture, municipal, and industrial, are sufficient to support this growth. Public policies adopted by our nations, such as Brazil's Fuels of the Future Act and Quebec's Plan for Green Economy, are essential to ensure a sustainable transition. Strategic partnerships between Quebec and Brazil, like the CPA initiative, carbon pricing in the Americas, reinforce these efforts by driving innovation and technological development. Today's webinar is an excellent opportunity to explore how Quebec and Brazil can combine their expertise to achieve our shared objectives. Together, we can make the energy transition a powerful level for economic growth and sustainability. Bon webinaire à toutes et à tous. Muito obrigado. Merci.
Muito obrigada, Embaixador Coimbra, et merci beaucoup, Jason, pour vos commentaires d'introduction. You've certainly set the stage phenomenally for what is to be an informative and stimulating conversation. And in this webinar, we hope to provide a comprehensive look at how Brazil and Canada, two countries with strong commitments to innovation and environmental stewardship, are shaping the future of sustainable fuels. Canada and Brazil are leading producers of bioenergy and fuels, and each have developed localized expertise. Brazil is the second largest biofuel producer in the world, having become a global leader in sugarcane-based ethanol. And Canada, as Jason just noted, is a major exporter of wood pellets and quickly becoming a leader in biomass production. And in both cases, economic necessity led to innovation and growing demand for cleaner fuels, as well as policy stimulating production, contributing to two great next generation industries. Each market holds important positions in global trade and the decarbonization of fuels and energy. Both have introduced sustainable fuels legislation, as noted by Ambassador Coimbra and Jason. Decarbonization strategies and shifting consumer demands are driving the need for concrete, scalable, and sustainable solutions to reduce greenhouse gas emissions. This shift demands a technologically agnostic approach, and biofuels can contribute in greater ways as we look to decarbonize transportation, especially aviation and shipping, industry, and the energy sector. A global climate transition requires collaboration, which is why I'm so happy to have so many great partners contributing to this webinar. Canada and Brazil have a long-standing trade and investment relationship in many sectors, and biofuels could be one too, which is why I'm so excited to bring together leading experts from Brazil and Canada to discuss how greening fuels can contribute to a sustainable future. And so without further ado, let's get into it. I'm very excited to invite Tamar Reutman, an energy specialist at the Institute for Climate and Society based in Brazil, having worked many years in industry and research institutions like the FGV, where we first met many, many years ago. And a big welcome to Devin O'Grady, the Director of Fuels at the Canadian Fuels Association, who I had the pleasure of meeting in person last week at Scaling Up Bioeconomy in Ottawa, where Brazil was the featured country. And so there's clearly a lot of activity happening between our great countries. And so welcome, Tamar and Devin. Devin and Tamar. Canada and Brazil are global producers of biofuels, and we noted between us a couple of the great strengths of our markets. But could you please each elaborate from your perspectives what Canada and Brazil's strategic advantages are in developing biofuels? Devin, kick us off.
Great, thanks very much. And maybe just a quick word for those who don't know who the Canadian Fuels Association is. So we're an industry association headquartered in Ottawa. We represent all the refiners across the country. So fuel producers, both conventional fuels, so your gasoline, diesel, as well as biofuels like ethanol and renewable diesel. So in terms of strategic advantages that Canada has in developing biofuels, I think first off, what sets the stage there is the policy. So we have, with our clean fuel regulations, a life cycle assessment-based, technology neutral policy that is also based around a credit market, which is important for setting that investment signal. And so this policy, like a low carbon fuel standard in California, for example, rewards lower carbon intensity fuels, and we have a trajectory out to 2030 to reduce the carbon intensity of gasoline and diesel by 15%. So that really is kind of the foundation, if you will, in terms of sending that signal for biofuel production and use in Canada. And it also builds off some of the provincial policies we have in the country, many of which have blend mandates in the respective pools, but also in British Columbia, which was the first jurisdiction in Canada to introduce a low carbon fuel standard. And so when you have credits especially in British Columbia and Canada, it creates this stacking incentive that really drives fuel demand into the BC market. And we've seen that with over 30% blending in the diesel pool. So over 30% renewable content in the diesel pool today. In terms of other advantages that we have for producing biofuels, Obviously, Canada is a pretty big country, so we have lots of regional strengths across it. I'd say feedstocks is probably one of the biggest advantages there. So we have a big corn base in Ontario and Quebec, and that's where you'll find most of our ethanol production. We also have oil seeds such as canola, which are used for more on the biodiesel and renewable diesel side. And so, especially in the context of the current global trade barriers that exist, our canola industry, our farmers are looking for that opportunity to use product within Canada. And so we're hoping that recent renewable diesel production that's come online by Imperial Oil in Alberta, and then through another technology, co-processing, is another avenue where we can take advantage of those canola feedstocks. And I think it was also pointed out by Jason that other feedstocks like forest biomass, we have a lot of forest biomass, we have a lot of forests in Canada, and there's been many studies that point to we could be doing a better job in terms of taking care of our forests so that we avoid forest fires, which have become a recent issue. And so gathering and taking those forest feedstocks and getting that ready to be produced for refinery use is another spot that we're looking at. And then maybe just in terms of a lot of these policies bring obviously the climate benefit, but in many cases it's also those economic benefits and jobs to those rural communities where the feedstocks are located and where we can place those types of facilities like biorefineries. And I'm sure similar to Brazil, we have obviously this existing experience producing biofuels and the refinery experience. So we see that as a strategic advantage, certainly in terms of being able to transition to these other fuel types and using that innovative know-how to leverage that and kind of get into the biofuel and future advanced sustainable fuels markets. So maybe I'll stop there.
Thank you so much, Devin. Tomorrow, I'll let you give your thoughts before I jump in with a follow-up question on that.
Okay, so first of all, thank you, Andrea. Thank you, BCCC, for the invitation. It's a pleasure to be here. Just let you understand a little bit more about ICS. So ICS is a philanthropic organization. So we were created right after the Paris Agreement to support the climate agenda in Brazil. So our focus is in Brazil. And I'm specialized in biofuels, so this is my agenda here at ICS. And as Ambassador already mentioned, so Brazil has a large experience in biofuels. You have already mentioned as well, Andrea. And what I would like to say more, what is our contribution, how we can move this agenda forward. So we, as an upside of having strategic feedstocks, as we mentioned, so sugarcane, corn, soybeans. We have different feedstocks that are already being developed, and some that are still can be developed, and we need to invest more. But some one of them is macaúba, is a really strategic feedstock for SAF. And is being developed by a few companies here in Brazil. It has great potential for SAF production, but still needs development and increasing, but it has really large potential. What I would like to say is that Brazil has particularly, I believe that it's a unique advantage and positive position of available lands, and this is different from a lot of countries that we have. Brazilian government has mapped 100 million hectares of degraded pastures that could be used not only for food production, but for reforestation and also for biofuels production. So biofuels production can help a lot in using this land to make the most of it, right? So since these areas are degraded with no use, and biofuels can help bringing a sustainable use to that land, and also an economic use. So you have mentioned, Andrea, the necessity, the importance of economics, right? So we will not be able to fight climate change without putting the economics in that, right? So biofuels are a sustainable option. What I believe is that it is not the unique solution for reducing fossil fuels dependence. Not every country will be able to produce biofuels, but it's a solution. It's part of the solution, right? And we have to be able to understand what is a sustainable way to produce that without deforestation, without worsening food security, but we can do that. So, right, we need to be able to do that. I believe I'm jumping ahead a little bit, but what I would like to say about Brazil, so we have this great potential for expansion, possibility for expansion of biofuels production, and also a robust regulatory environment, as Ambassador already described and told about RenovaBio, Mover program, future of the fuels law. So we have a really robust environment and regulatory environment for promoting biofuels as well. So, and of course, great potential for investments in this industry, right?
Absolutely. And I feel like we could have an entirely separate webinar on food security versus biofuels and the environmental impacts. But of course, we'll maybe save it for a different event. But it's something that I've always admired about Brazil is its multi-crop system, its innovation in new technologies, and the same could be said for Canada. Both agricultural powerhouses and both coming with a lot of innovation. Now, you both touched on regulatory topics, and I'm going to pull in a question that we received in advance, just because we're already on the topic of regulation and looking for cross-border investments and opportunities. And I'd be curious to hear, a few high-level thoughts from both of you on the fact that there are two different regulatory frameworks, one in Brazil and one in Canada, where in Canada you would also have provincial legislation as well. And so how could we prepare companies to operate under these different frameworks? What are maybe some of the resources, or maybe some of the tips that you would give to some of our listeners, given that the focus of the respective regulations are slightly different, with a focus on production versus maybe more of a credit system? So I would love, Tamar, if you had some initial thoughts, and then Devin, please jump in.
Sure. So here in Brazil, we have these different kinds of regulations. So the mandates are really focused on expanding, guaranteeing a demand. So it really helps to have security for investments in biofuels production. But also RenovaBio, which is a policy that rewards the biofuels producer with efficiency, and the more sustainable the biofuel, the more they will receive in the form of credits. So I believe they are both really great policies, and they have like different different ways of conducting. RenovaBio is, I would say, it's a little bit more complex. It requires, regulatory environment, a lot of discussions, but I believe it's also more interesting for the society, for everyone to understand the idea of sustainability, because when you have a mandate, the person who is in the fuel station, he doesn't know that the gasoline has 20. I don't know if they know if the gasoline has 27% of ethanol, and they don't realize that. So for the society, when they can see that there is a possibility to use ethanol, and it can be cheaper because the producer is receiving credits, and he can understand that the more sustainable the fuel, the more it's more valued. I believe that for society, it has a message that is really important. So, but both of them are really, they are, coherent, and they are needed for expansion of biofuels, but they have a different approaches, right? So it's interesting to understand what it does with how it affects the society.
Devin, any complimentary thoughts to that, to Tamar's comments?
Yeah, it's it's certainly a good question in terms of how you get that, how you raise awareness and bring education to the general public on what are very complicated regulations, and and how you make them see perhaps a benefit there. So certainly the clean fuel regulations, it took 6, almost 7 years to just develop and put in place. So it is it's certainly not an easy regulation to understand. It's quite complex and multifaceted. So the government of Canada, I say, has a big role in terms of bringing that education and doing outreach sessions, and posting materials. Notably, that goes towards obviously the fuel suppliers who are the obligated parties, but also throughout that regulation, there's many opportunities for credit generation, and that could be from an RNG pathway or plant, a green hydrogen, and of course liquid biofuels. So it's bringing these new entrants and maybe smaller companies that are looking to get into this space, bringing them up to speed as well. And so I think these government outreach sessions play a large role in doing that. And then ourselves, the associations, also have a big role to play. So CFA has participated in a number of policy-based webinars with other organizations in Canada, to kind of highlight not even just the clean fuel regulation, but other regulations in this space that impact the sector. And certainly we do a lot of outreach through conferences, like the one that we were at in Ottawa last week, and trying to get those messages out to the various audiences. So working, I think, also along the supply chain. So whether it's with the agriculture community or the forest community, and then other biofuels associations, to really bring together a cohesive narrative, and bringing that forward along the full supply chain of the fuel system. I think that also helps tell the story and bring better awareness and knowledge to the public.
Absolutely. There's often themes when trying to talk about increasing collaboration and partnerships, and one of them is there's greater awareness to the topics, and maybe some of the details that most folks maybe won't take the time to get into, but being able to communicate those in a way that have a direct impact on investment, on creating business opportunities, and ultimately having that economic impact, I think is key. And so that's what we're here for. And a quick reminder also to our audience, if you have any questions, I'll be receiving them as we go. We will have a Q&A session, but a quick reminder for our folks online, if they have any questions, do ask ahead. Otherwise, I will keep talking and asking my own questions, which like I said, I could talk for hours on this topic. And one of the things that I wanted to touch on is sometimes when we're talking about trade and investment, there's the comparative advantage, and then there's the competition side. And not everything has to be a competition. Here we are, two countries that have, expertise and leadership in biofuels, but in different technologies. And I think there's a lot of opportunities for collaboration, even in a sector that would seemingly be competitive between us. And so, Devin, maybe you can give us a thought too. I know that you bring a wealth of experience from a domestic and international regulatory perspective. So I'm sure, sometimes competition comes into those discussions. But I would love to hear from both of you, what would you say are the collaborative opportunities between Canada and Brazil? So Devin and Tamar, jump right in afterwards.
Sure, thanks for the question. And I think we've already have kind of started that work with through our respective governments. I think the departments of energy or natural resources within Canada and Brazil have already started that collaborative work. I know there's some work underway, I think, at the Mission Innovation or Clean Energy Ministerial, where some projects on biorefineries, and I think more recently around SAF have been initiated. And so I think we already have a good foundation and building off of that. I think with our respective regulatory programs, there's always the opportunity, and I think this is talked about at any kind of global conference you attend, is how do you better align, harmonize the LCA or carbon accounting systems that are kind of positioned behind the regulations themselves, so that you're not disadvantaging or promoting one fuel type with a carbon intensity in one jurisdiction that's vastly different in another jurisdiction, and that can have kind of disruptions in terms of logistics and where you end up sending your product. And we see it already in the market, but any opportunity to help align those systems is certainly I think something that every industry and fuel provider would look forward to. In terms of specific technologies, co-processing, I mentioned it earlier, so that's where it's kind of a reversal of the traditional blend, the finished ethanol with the finished gasoline. Now we're talking about bringing in a renewable feedstock at the beginning of the process and putting it into your refinery. And then that biogenic material is carried through and dispersed throughout the products. So it's something that a lot of our refiners have recently started to implement. Some of them have been doing it for almost 10 years now, but it's become a more favorable, I guess, pathway for compliance as it's leveraging that existing infrastructure. And so it makes the economics a lot more favorable instead of going out and building a new standalone, billion-dollar renewable diesel facility in some cases. And so, it's a good way of using that infrastructure, taking advantage of feedstocks that are in proximity, and getting those credits through the end use product. So I think I was reading Brazil recently. I can't recall which refiner, but had got approval for a co-process pathway for SAF. And so again, there's lots of, I think, opportunities there to learn best practices, what is working, what isn't working in terms of that co-processing technology. And maybe one last space I'll touch on is carbon capture and storage. Canada's been, I think, a leader in that space for a number of years, mainly through the oil sands operations that we have out in Western Canada and existing projects that have been underway for a number of years there. But we're starting to see it implemented more in the ethanol space now on some of the ethanol projects that we have. There's still, a big opportunity with the existing refineries to lower the gasoline and diesel traditional fuels. So I think that is another technology and space that we can certainly collaborate on with Brazil.
Can I jump in? Okay. Okay, so I agree with everything that Evan has said. So I believe that what is considered sustainable, right, should be we should have this collaboration for these definitions. So especially when we consider these international markets that are aviation and maritime, and so we will need to have collaboration that, right? So an aviation that leaves from Canada, comes to Brazil, it needs to have the possibility to fuel here and and vice versa. So in these scenarios, more specifically in international scenario, we need that collaboration from all of the countries to have these criteria, what is considered sustainable, and we need to be able, right, to collaborate in this. To having these robust and transparent methodologies that are considering the reality of the countries, but that they can provide safety for the consumers, right? For the who is going to fuel the ships or the airplanes. So we need to have this collaboration in that area, and to to reach for what is the best patterns and criterias. And so I totally agree with Devin, and I believe that maybe some of the discussions are being diverted and are not being collaborative in that sense, right? So in this market, and and this is a win-win situation for the countries. We need to have this international market. It has to happen in a collaborative way, otherwise it won't happen. So we will stay only in our internal markets. So aviation and maritime sector, they can and they must reduce emissions, and there aren't a lot of solutions. So biofuels are a way to do that, and in order for them to bring that to be a part of the decarbonization agenda, they have to know we need to collaborate. We need to have this criteria more robust and more discussed, right?
I appreciate both of you touching on that, because I think in every industry that is trying to develop and stimulate investment in sustainable technologies, when crossing borders, there's this challenge of common regulatory frameworks. And if you'll allow me just a quick second, maybe to give the audience a sense of who is leading in that space. Is it let's say for the maritime, it's the International Organization of Maritime, and then for aviation, I think it's the IOAC. Is it those respective organizations that are leading that charge? And maybe how can we as technology developers or supporters of technology maybe support these discussions and move the needle forward? Devin, I see that you have unmuted, so by all means.
Sure, I'll jump in. Yeah, it's certainly a good question, and how that role of international and where do the companies or associations fit in as well. So maybe picking up on the aviation side, which I think had a bigger head start compared to the maritime. So you mentioned, I think it's ICAO, the International Civil Aviation Organization. So they've been, developing CORSIA for a number of years. And I think in terms of the role there, like Brazil and Canada already have representatives, well, obviously through the government, but industry as well. And we participate on this other association called IPICA, which brings together global refiners and fuel suppliers. And so through IPICA, we submit, joint papers around positions. And it's not an advocacy, it's more of an industry technical know-how perspective to bring forward to help inform the rules and guidelines that are set under ICAO. And I think it's super important because we're the ones that are implementing these technologies, have that background, whether it's on sustainability approaches in carbon accounting, or it's carbon capture and storage, or producing SAF itself. So having industry at those tables and active in those discussions, I think is certainly appreciated by the various governments to bring forth those perspectives. Like I said, otherwise I think they'd be lost in the discussions. And same thing on the maritime sector. And I mean, there was a bit of I guess at the last meeting, the net zero framework got delayed by a year. But I think there'll be, that's not going to put off the important work that's being done in the background to make those fuels kind of, given an appropriate carbon intensity default value or whatnot, and so that those pathways and that signal to the fuels can be established.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. Tamar, I don't know if you had any quick comments on the roles of associations and groups and ways in which we can get involved and contribute to these discussions.
Yeah, so just real quick, what I see that it's really important as we are understanding here the regulatory framework, how this is important to make the agenda happen. So these international negotiators, the industry needs that the rules. So the industry needs to understand and to have goals to reach, right? So the maritime organization, the International Maritime Organization, they have delayed a little bit the goals, the rules, but it will happen, right? It's no big deal that it's going to be a little bit delayed, but it's going to happen. And the market, the industry wants that. So we see that there are initiatives happening of operators fueling their airplanes with staff, maritime operators using and testing biofuels. So the industry is doing their job, they're doing their part, and they want to do more, but they also need the direction, right? So that's why this is so important to have these discussions, these international discussions, and the regulatory arrange, so it can move faster and with more integrity, more transparency. So it is really, really important to have these rules established.
And maybe just picking up on that quickly, I think also important in that sense is for industry to have those rules, like you're saying, because it takes 5 to 7 years to even build these. Well, in Canada, maybe Brazil, you're a lot quicker, but in Canada for sure, just getting permits and setting up everything takes 5 to 7 years to get a project through to completion, commission, and up and running. So that timeline is super important for investment certainty.
Absolutely. And so a call to our attendees, get involved in your associations, get involved, provide that technical knowledge where you can, and the more conversations we have on this topic, I think hopefully we can move forward a lot quicker and have more visibility on the topic. So I'll touch on one word that was said: initiatives, and of course I would be remiss if I didn't mention that we're just coming near the conclusion of COP30 in Belém, and coming up the heels of Brazil's G20 presidency, where several initiatives and pledges have been announced to drive sustainable development at a global level, including the G20 initiative on bioeconomy and the Belém 4X pledge on sustainable fuels. And so I would love to hear your thoughts on, what are the implications? What are the practical implications? What are maybe some of the other more holistic implications of these agreements for Canada and Brazil? And Tamar, let's start with you as being in the host country as we speak.
Yeah, sure. As we see, it's really challenging to have this consensus, and all the countries working together. Each of the country has their own challenges and problems and difficulties, and so but it is really important to have these messages, right? Like these key messages, the pledge for producing more biofuels, it is important to show that the countries, maybe not all, but a few countries are involved, and they need to work together. As we mentioned, I believe the word that we are getting here is collaboration, and that reducing fossil fuels dependency, it's not easy at all. It's really, really challenging. It demands a lot of efforts from the government, from the industry, from the society, right? So I believe these key messages that the COP brings, it may not reach all the consensus and everything that all the results that we expect, but it is a moment of reflection, at least, to make the countries think of how they can contribute, and putting all these possibilities in the table. And of course, biofuels are not the only solution, and every form of energy producing has impacts. And that's what I believe, that we have to have measures and conditions to compare and to understand which are the best solution for that country, that region, that segment, that sector. So, and just with only with transparent and robust measurement and methodologies, we will be able to do that. And we, as scientists, right, we can help a lot in that area.
Yes, I think first, congrats to Brazil and the other three countries. I think that brought this initiative forward, and we were pleased to see that the government of Canada eventually endorsed the pledge. And ourselves, CFA, we have indicated through a parallel call to action with an industry collective. We've indicated our endorsement that kind of supports the Belém pledge itself. In terms of what we're looking for or hoping for, I think a lot of details to come forward, obviously, and how that's implemented or leveraged, I guess. But certainly, we see it as a big, overarching policy that can be leaned on to increase production of biofuels in Canada. We don't just want to be kind of using other jurisdictions' biofuels. We're currently reliant on imports primarily from the U.S. So we're really looking to build out energy security and use our feedstocks that I've indicated before to our advantage, and bring those economic benefits to Canadians. And so I think we're really looking for, we have that kind of demand policy, but we're looking for more support side kind of fiscal instruments, whether it's an investment tax credit, a production tax credit, some of those fiscal tools that can help offset the OpEx. So it's not necessarily that we need capital help at the beginning, but it's those operational costs, mainly because of the feedstock. So to help offset that as you plan out your facilities and run them for 20, 30 years. And then even looking at infrastructure investments along the supply chain to facilitate more, E15 in the market, or more higher levels of biodiesel or renewable diesel, and even into, of course, the SAF and maritime fuel systems as well.
And Devin, I'm glad you touched on that as well, the infrastructure, and because one of the challenges in bringing in new fuels, and maybe it's more applicable to green hydrogen, for example, where you can't just use your existing infrastructure, to move that kind of fuel, and it may be the same. I'm not a scientist or an engineer, and so forgive me if I'm misspeaking, but you often might need some different type of infrastructure to either move or ship some of these fuels. And so, whether on the Brazilian side or the Canadian side, what opportunities or what expertise is there that can be shared in this space that needs the development to move us forward in this space. So Devin, by all means, if you wanted to kick it off, and Tamar, if you had any thoughts on that as well.
Sure, it's a good area to get into, and I don't have necessarily a background in all the metallurgy that needs to be used so that you're not breaking pipelines or something like that. But I think first of all, you need a resilient system, and one that can be backed up. We've seen in certain situations over the years, a flood in one area or a fire in another, and all of a sudden the fuel system is compromised because you can't get maybe a rail car or rail cars through for ethanol for blending, let's say. So it's having a reliable and I think resilient system in the first place. And then you're looking at, well, what kind of levels of hydrogen can you blend in, let's say, the natural gas infrastructure that's everywhere. Canada, primarily everywhere. And then same thing with the pipelines and what can you blend into your existing conventional pipelines. And terminals, do you need additional tankage, depending on the blends that the market needs? I think we're seeing this with the introduction and oncoming of more E15. It's how do you still offer an E10, an E5, an E0? There's only so much room, and how much choice do you offer to the consumer? Lots of questions, not a lot of answers at this time, but I think anytime we can collaborate on the experiences between the two countries and what's worked somewhere and maybe it could work. Obviously, our temperatures or our climates are different. So certainly in Canada, we need a lot more, I guess, guards against colder weather, as we're already seeing in November, at least here in Montreal and Ottawa. But I'll stop there and I'll turn it over to Tamer.
Yes, I just add that we are in the development of SAF, at least industry. So everything is new. We have just a few plants operating. So every chance to collaborate and to understand and to learn from each other is really valid, because we are all learning. All the companies that are working at this moment with SAF, they are learning. It's really recent. So this technology is being developed, and what is really important is to have the safety criteria, right? So since mainly because it is in the air, when we consider it needs to have really international safety regulation, and we have that. So the use of biofuels must be, that's why it's really expensive, because it has to comply with this really strict quality exigence. So it's really important. But it's interesting that we have different options. So SAF could be produced from sugarcane, so from ethanol, from oil, seed. So there are a lot of routes, and each country will understand which the best solution, right, for them, what they can offer. So, and for the maritime, I'm now studying more this subject, and I'm seeing that there is necessity for the ports to be adapted, to have different tanks, and so the ships can. The ships that use biofuels, they may be bigger and they need more room. So the ports are also working a lot in adapting and making possible for this decarbonization. And this is something that we can also, exchange experience, right?
Absolutely. I think there's so many opportunities, whether it's on the feedstock side, on infrastructure investment, on policy and regulatory frameworks. There's so many opportunities to collaborate and share knowledge from our respective experiences, whether you're in the plus 40 degrees to the minus 40 and to bring those different environments. We have 1 minute left, and I have one question that I'm going to throw over to you, Tamar. As Devin mentioned it earlier, and Canada's great expertise in carbon capture. What is the demand for carbon capture in Brazil? Where can Canadian technology fit in that space?
Okay, great. It's something that is really in the early stages, but the Future of Fuels law, it has already established it's the beginning of a regulation for that. The government has already released public consultation on that subject. I would say that's not my knowledge area of knowledge, but I'm learning, and there is really great potential when you consider the BECCS, right? The use of bio CCS. And we have, since the production of ethanol and biogas and biomethane. So this is where I believe that there is really a great potential to explore more. And I see a few movements from the industry still in early stages, but as you mentioned, regulation is really important to provide the what investors need in terms of transparency, previsibility. So the regulation is being is being discussed. So it's something that I believe that the market will go for, and it would be really interesting to explore these opportunities of collaboration with Canada.
So count on Canada and its technology. On behalf, we've come up to the hour. I'm a minute over it, so my apologies. On behalf of the BCCC, I want to thank our sponsors, partners, and members. This event is one of many that the BCCC organizes to promote connections between Brazil and Canada. Please visit our website and social media channels. Connect with our speakers, Devin and Tamar, and think of the BCCC when you're looking to expand, whether in Canada or Brazil. We've got an upcoming webinar of the BCCC webinar on the CUP30, the aftermath, next week. And so do check out our website to register. We also offer membership and sponsorship opportunities where you'll gain visibility and networking opportunities at all of our events. So thank you so much for joining today. Thank you, Tamar, Devin, Ambassador Coimbra, and Jason for your introductory remarks, and count on the BCCC to expand your network in Brazil and Canada. Tchau, tchau. Até a próxima.